The Galactic Institute of Xenobiology stood as a monument to interspecies cooperation, its crystalline spires reaching toward the violet sky of Nexus Prime. Within its halls, students from 100 worlds gathered to learn the fundamentals of universal biology. Today, Professor Velthar's comparative nutrition class was about to witness something that would be discussed in academic circles for decades to come. Rose Martinez sat in the third row, her notebook open and stylus ready. She was one of only 3 humans attending the institute this semester, a fact that still filled her with pride. Getting accepted had been the achievement of a lifetime. Beside her sat her boyfriend Alex Chen, who was busy calibrating his datapad to record the lecture. Today, Professor Velthar announced, his chitinous mandibles clicking with enthusiasm, we will examine the biochemical foundations of nutrition across species. Pay particular attention to solvent-based metabolic processes. The amphitheater filled with the soft rustling of various appendages as students prepared to take notes. Rose noticed the Krillian student to her left eyeing her with curiosity. Humans were still somewhat of a novelty in these spaces. Professor Velthar manipulated the holographic display, showing molecular structures that rotated in brilliant blue light. As you know, most carbon-based life forms require a universal solvent for their metabolic processes. This solvent must be capable of dissolving nutrients, facilitating chemical reactions, and maintaining cellular integrity. Alex leaned toward Rose and whispered, "This is basic stuff. Wonder when he'll get to the interesting part." Rose elbowed him gently. "Shh. Not everyone here knows our biology." The professor continued, "The most common universal solvent, used by approximately 73% of known species, is what we call dihydrogen monoxide. Highly polar molecule, excellent solvent properties, relatively stable across a range of temperatures." A 3-dimensional model of a water molecule appeared in the hologram. Rose recognized it immediately but kept her expression neutral. However, Velthar's voice took on a more serious tone. "This compound is extraordinarily dangerous. In its liquid form, it is highly corrosive to most species' tissue. It causes catastrophic cellular breakdown, oxidative damage, and in sufficient quantities, complete systemic failure." He paused for effect. "We use it in our industrial processes as a solvent and cleaning agent, but it must be handled with extreme caution." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the class. The Krillian beside Rose shuddered visibly, her exoskeleton clicking in what might have been fear or disgust. For this reason, the professor gestured toward a sealed container on his desk. "I have brought a sample properly contained to demonstrate its properties. Under no circumstances should any of you come into contact with this substance." Alex's hand shot up. Rose felt her stomach drop. She knew that look in his eye. "Yes, human Alex?" The professor's translator rendered his tone as curious. "Professor, could you clarify something? When you say dihydrogen monoxide, you mean H2O, correct? 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen." "Correct, human Alex. Are you familiar with the compound?" The entire class turned to look at Alex. Rose buried her face in her hands, knowing exactly what was coming. "Oh, I'm very familiar with it, Professor." Alex reached into his backpack and pulled out his water bottle, the one emblazoned with the university logo that he'd filled at the fountain before class. He held it up so the light caught the clear liquid inside. "In fact, I've got about half a liter of it right here." The reaction was instantaneous. The Krillian beside Rose scrambled backward so fast she knocked over her desk. A Vexarian student in the front row let out a high-pitched whistle of alarm. Professor Velthar's 4 eyes widened simultaneously, and his natural camouflage flickered through several colors of distress. "Human Alex, please." Velthar raised his primary manipulator appendages. "Secure that container immediately." If it were to breach, Alex unscrewed the cap. The sound echoed in the suddenly silent amphitheater like a gunshot. Several students evacuated their seats, pressing themselves against the far walls. "It's fine, Professor," Alex said calmly. "Watch." And then, while the entire class looked on in absolute horror, Alex Chen raised the bottle to his lips and took a long drink. Rose heard what sounded like someone fainting in the back row. The Krillian had gone completely rigid, locked in some kind of shock response. Professor Velthar's translator emitted sounds it probably wasn't designed to make. Alex lowered the bottle and smiled. "See, perfectly safe. For humans, anyway." Rose decided she might as well commit to the chaos. She pulled out her own water bottle. He's right, Professor. Humans are approximately 60% water by mass. We literally swim in the stuff. It's essential to our survival. 60%? The professor's voice was barely a whisper. You mean to tell me that your bodies are primarily composed of industrial solvent? Pretty much, Alex confirmed cheerfully. We need to consume about 2 to 3 liters daily or we die. It makes up our blood, our cellular structure, it's in every tissue. Right now, the dangerous corrosive compound you're worried about is flowing through my veins, keeping my brain functioning and helping me digest my lunch. Rose stood and approached the professor's desk, her own water bottle in hand. May I? She gestured toward his sealed container. Velthar nodded weakly, too stunned to speak. Rose examined the container's label. Yep, this is just regular water. Triple distilled, industrial grade, but it's the same stuff. She opened her bottle and took a drink, maintaining eye contact with the professor. We also bathe in it. Daily, usually. Sometimes we sit in tubs full of it just to relax. A Gantharian student who had been silent until now spoke up, his vocal sac pulsing with emotion. But the oxidative properties. The cellular breakdown. How do you not simply dissolve? Alex leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself now. Well, our cells are adapted to it. Our entire biochemistry evolved in and around water. Our planet's surface is about 70% covered in the stuff. We have entire enormous bodies of it. Oceans, we call them. Some of us actually live on boats, floating on water for months at a time. Professor Velthar had lowered himself into his chair, all 4 eyes still fixed on the humans. Your world is covered in the solvent. Yep, Rose confirmed. Falls from the sky regularly, too. We call it rain. Sometimes it freezes solid, we call that snow or ice. Kids play in it, throw it at each other for fun. We have entire sports based around it, Alex added. Swimming, diving, water polo, surfing, riding on top of moving water for entertainment. The professor's translator was silent for a long moment as he processed this information. Finally he spoke, his tone carrying a mixture of awe and disbelief. In all my years of xenobiological study, I have never encountered anything quite like this. Humanity survives, thrives in conditions that would be immediately lethal to most spacefaring species. Rose smiled gently, trying to ease the shock in the room. To be fair, Professor, there are probably things you consider normal that would kill us just as quickly. That's why xenobiology is so important to study. Alex raised his water bottle in a mock toast. The universe is weird, Professor. We're all just trying to figure out how to not accidentally kill each other with our basic life requirements. Slowly, cautiously, the other students began returning to their seats. The Krillian was still keeping her distance, but her biosigns had stabilized. Professor Velthar straightened his posture, his natural composure returning. Well then, he said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement, I believe we should add an entire supplementary unit to this course. Extreme biochemical adaptations, the human example. Human Rose, human Alex, I trust you'll be willing to assist with some guest lectures? Rose and Alex exchanged glances and grinned. Absolutely, Professor, Rose replied, as the class continued. With students now viewing the humans with a mixture of fear and fascination, Alex leaned over to Rose and whispered, Wait until they find out about coffee. Rose stifled a laugh. Or alcohol. Let's not give them all heart attacks in one day. The lecture proceeded, but the atmosphere had changed fundamentally. The humans in the room were no longer just fellow students. They were living reminders of just how diverse, how resilient, and how absolutely terrifying life in the universe could be. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was a new understanding. Humanity didn't just survive in a hostile universe. They were built from the very substances that made it hostile to everyone else. Professor Velthar would later write a paper titled, Humanity, When Evolution Chooses Violence. It would become required reading in xenobiology programs across the galaxy.